to us about certain web technologies. So we are going to start off. I'm just going to give you certain information that you need to know. This is the Google Developers Club of Macquarie University, and our goal is to enable people understand different technologies that Google provides, and they can use them to solve problems in their society. One of the goals is, of course, to help the UN reach their sustainable development goals. So we would expect that people use the technologies that are available from Google, and of course,
Yes, sir.
vast majority of companies that release technologies can use them to address problems in their societies. I'm going to give you a high-level overview of certain web technologies that exist in the ecosystem of web development, and certain things that we could use to address some problems using technologies of the web. So I'm going to start my presentation. Okay. So I'm Elijah Okello, and I'm the GDSC MUK co-lead, and the person who was supposed to do this session, due to circumstances beyond her control, was not able to be part of us, so I'm filling in for her, but she's an amazing person. She's called Catherine Chanzi. So that is me. To start off this presentation, I'm going to go to the next slide. We have so many services running on web technologies. Well, for example, Amazon, Google, Jumia, and so many others that you can think about. All of them are running on not Google, but are running on web technologies. And it's very important that people understand these technologies, because solutions to our problems will definitely come from a web point of view. An example of the way Google helps people a lot is their search engine service helps students to access education resources, understand lots of things. So web development is very relevant in this age and time, because there are many problems that could be solved and actually can be solved, if not being solved, that can be solved by the web technologies that are available. So we have so many resources out there that can help us to understand all these technologies and help us to build solutions for the world. Let me go on to the next slide. So we have different web technologies. I'm going to be hinting on every technology that is here. There are some of you that are beginners, maybe that who do not know anything about web development. You need to understand these technologies at a high level before our expert gets onto the demystification of web development. So the first icon there is HTTP. HTTP is an open source protocol that helps to deliver content on the World Wide Web. The World Wide Web is, the name suggests, it's the World Wide Web. So HTTP is a protocol that does that, and it is really what helps to serve content on the internet. So it's it is used for that. So I think you've seen your when you share URLs around, they usually begin with like a HTTP or HTTPS, where S means secure. So that is it. Then we have HTML. HTML is a hypertext markup language. It is a language that runs in a web browser, and it basically does the job of fixing the structure of the way the web page is supposed to look like. Then it's generally for fixing structure. It's like a skeleton, the bare bones of the way a web page is supposed to look like, specifying the layout and fixing things here and there. We have CSS as well. CSS is cascading style sheets in full, and what it does is, now we know that HTML does the structuring of a page. CSS does the job of giving it styling, fixing colors, positioning. It's like if you think about it, HTML could be the skeleton, and then the CSS is the skin. So it gives you some, some padding, make it look good and all that sort of thing. So that's really what CSS is all about. CSS does that styling, and they say it's cascading because sheets actually you can have one object being defined by multiple styles. So an object is like an element in HTML. Then we have JavaScript. JavaScript is a programming language. It runs in your browser. That means it's actually compiled in your browser. So you may hear people talk about terms like client-side programming language, server-side programming language, or saying someone is a full stack, developer or something. So a client-side programming language is one that runs in the browser. That means it runs, um, and that means it runs, mm, it runs in the browser. That means it runs at the client side. It runs where the client is. We are using Google Meet right now for this session, and we have certain resources. Okay, we have certain resources that are being delivered to us to our computers, whether you're using a phone or a laptop. It doesn't matter. You are a client to Google Meet. So Google Meet has certain client-side technologies that are running in your browser that you're using, or your application that you're using. So that's what JavaScript is. JavaScript helps to make the pages interactive. It helps to, you know, helps to manipulate the HTML, the page. It really does some cool stuff. You will see some pop-ups happening in some pages. That is all made possible by JavaScript. And then we have that little elephant there. It's PHP. It represents PHP. PHP is a server-side programming language, so the job of the job of doing server side work. When I say server side, I mean okay. Let me put it like this. We have websites that are on the internet, and websites that are on the internet are not running in the cloud like certain our culture usually represents. They're not running in a cloud. They're actually running on data centers or servers. You can call them servers. They're running in data centers, and those data centers have computers that are running your websites. You can call it a server. Now, PHP runs on the server. It does what we call uh, CRUD operations: creation, writing, updating, and deleting of database objects. So it also does file system manipulation, so you can write files onto the server, store certain things, and have have it do some of those server side work. It's actually the one that implements the website functionality. The website functionality, most of it, like the logging in, creating of certain objects, um, deleting, updating, all that stuff is done by PHP. Now, PHP is in a class of languages we call the backend languages, like the server-side languages. We also have Python. Python is that this this one here. I think you can see it. Python. I'm pointing on it. This is Python. This is PHP. Python, personally, it's a favorite for me. I like programming in Python. It's very good, and it helps you do a lot of things, just as well as PHP. I don't want to bias anyone. PHP is good, but you could use both, any of the two. Then we have database management systems like MySQL or MySQL and Postgres. The MySQL is that one that has a dolphin on it, and then Postgres is that elephant with that elephant icon. Now, both of them are relational database management systems that can help you store data in store data properly in your system. So you may need to store information about different things like let me say users or something of the sort. So those relational database management systems help you to do that. That is exactly what they were built for. So those technologies all together, of course, there are a vast majority of others that hopefully our expert is going to hint on. Actually, is going to take you deep. Um, we Those are technologies that really just form the bare bones of the internet. So there are so many other things that are running the internet, things that are keeping it together, and everything connected. So that's really those technologies that are there. I believe you have a high level understanding of the way web technologies help the internet to operate at large. I really hope you have understood. Um, are there any questions? 1 minute, please. I'm going to leave 1 minute for questions.
Yes, Elijah.
Yes, please.
Well, thank you for the presentation.
You're welcome.
Um, are we going to be able to use Node.js for the backend if we wanted
Uh,
to?
yes, okay. Yes, Node.js is a yes, it's a framework. It's a backend framework that runs JavaScript on the server side. You can actually use Node.js to run your server side, functionality and all that sort of thing. So yeah, you can use Node.js. Of course, I'm not going into it because it's a whole other other framework, and I also do not know too much about it. Hopefully, maybe our expert will talk something about it. I don't know. Maybe he can, depending on what he has prepared for us. So that is really it. So our minute is done for questions. Let me move on to the next thing.
Thank you.
So this, you're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you so much for the question. So we have these web technologies. I've really been explaining them. So this is just a write-up of things that I have been talking about. We need to note that JavaScript also runs on the server side. Davis's question was about Node.js, and Node.js actually is a server-side runtime environment for JavaScript. So you can actually do some server-side operations with JavaScript using Node.js. Um, so let me just read through this very fast. HTML is hypertext markup language, and it's used for structuring a web page and specifying page layout. CSS is cascading style sheets. It is used for adding style, color, and setting position of HTML elements. JavaScript is a programming language that is used to add interactivity to HTML elements. It runs in the browser but can also run on the server. PHP and Python are programming languages that strictly run on the server. They implement server side functionality like database and file system manipulation. Of course, there are very many other server side programming languages that anyone could use. We have Ruby, we have Java, um, we have, I think, I think even C Sharp can do certain things in the server. We have, I think, we have C, Objective C. So you can use any of those for server side operations, but the most famous one is PHP, and it powers 23% of the internet through WordPress. So let's go on. MySQL and PostgreSQL are relational database management systems that are used for information storage and retrieval. Now, these database management systems that I've told you about are not the only ones that are there. We have so many of them. We have MongoDB, we have MariaDB. Of course, MariaDB is like an extension of MySQL. Mm. But there are so many out there. Some I don't even know, but people are using them. Okay, there's a question in the chat. I've just seen it right now by Joram Granga. He's asking what's the difference between framework, library, and runtime. I will forward that question to our expert. I think he has a better understanding of those those terms. So Abdul Kudus, I think you will answer that. Yeah, you can just note it down. Okay, thank you so much for the questions. So let's proceed. So how to get started? How do you get started? The first thing, in my opinion, is make the decision to start learning. I have been, doing web development for some time now, and of course, to get into this field, there was that time when I made the decision to get my computer and go and ask Google what is web development, and understand all those technologies that it needs, and try to get everything uh, working. Yeah. So in my opinion, you will need to start with the basics. For example, you could start with HTML and CSS. Of course, I believe the vast majority of people here could be already familiar with web technologies, and this beginner introduction could be, I wouldn't want to say wastage of time, that could be just a humble reminder. But there are people who know these things already. But for anyone who is on this meeting and does not understand what web development is, and this is your new thing, the first thing, if you want to get started, is to take action, make that decision to get your computer, get out of your comfort zone, and start looking for the content. Look for the content and understand, read, and just practice. And the best thing is practice makes perfect. You need to be very proactive when it comes to looking for information. Be hungry when you face a problem. Don't be discouraged. So just keep at it. You have to commit to it. Commitment is very key. So if you start, you may face a problem in the first 1 week, and you have failed to solve it all the way through. So you just have to commit to it. Because I remember the time when I was studying a certain framework, I had failed to install it for 3 weeks straight. So I, of course, I was very discouraged. I felt like I was never meant to be a developer, but I kept on trying hard, and yeah, those that know me know that I am quite exceptional when it comes to my craft with what I know. But that's it. So I have some resources for you. You could go to MDN. MDN in full is Mozilla Developer Network. They have very good documentation on they have very good documentation on web development. It's actually a very good opportunity for people to learn. Even experienced developers like me, I still refer to Mozilla Developer Networks. Okay, I'm not as experienced, but I have a certain amount of experience. So I also refer to MDN, Mozilla Developer Network, and then also W3 Schools. Um, the W3 Schools is it's a very huge resource, very huge resource. They have almost everything about web development. I don't think there's anything that about web development that they don't know. So I'm going to be sending the links into the chat, and then you will look through them. Probably, try to get a deep dive into what web development technologies are, understand them better, get a gist and understanding of how everything works. Now, we are going to, I think this is it for me. So next up, we have our expert who is going to talk to us. There are certain questions that are already waiting for you, Mr. Abdul Kudus. So you can admit and take over the floor. Let me stop sharing. Thank you so much. I hope he's here.
All right. Yes, yes. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah. All right. Hello, everyone. Yeah, nice presentation, Elijah. And please, yeah, I am not a boss. We're all learning. Um, yeah.
Thank
So
you.
I am going to start with my presentation. And I will get to the questions after my presentation. I guess makes sense that way. So I'm going to share my screen. Can you let me know when you can see my screen?
Yeah, we can see
We
it.
can
Thank
see
you.
the screen.
Oh yeah.
Can see it
All
too.
right. Cool. Um, all right. My name is Abdul Kudus Bakri. I am a front-end developer at Satisfaction. Also a co-organizer for GDG Bida. So today we'll just be looking at getting started with web development. So I am not going to be going deep into several frameworks or libraries because the web is quite wide, and if we decide to go into each of these languages or frameworks, we will spend weeks here and we still wouldn't be done. So I'm just going to give like an overview, things you might you can learn them. And if you have any questions, you can drop them on the chat section. I'm not able to see it right now, but the host can, call my attention to it if there are any questions. So what exactly is a web, right? I mean, you could say it's a fine thread constructed by a spider in reality, the web is an interconnected system of public web pages, right? So you have different computers in different places that are interconnected, and you can access them through the internet. So that's basically the definition of the web. Um, how exactly does the web works, right? So you pick up your laptop or your phone, you open up your web browser in Instagram.com, and you see, that fancy UI, and you interact with it, probably try to place an order online. But how exactly does it work, right? So when you open up your laptop, or your phone, open up your web browser and you type in Instagram.com, for example, um, Instagram.com is domain name that points to an IP address, and that IP address belongs to a computer somewhere else. So there is a computer somewhere else that has an IP address, something like 192.168. Blah blah blah. But then it will have been difficult for us humans to keep on memorizing those IP addresses, right? Imagine you have to memorize about 10 IP addresses in your head. So that was where the idea of domain name came about. So you have something like facebook.com, instagram.com that points to an IP address, right? So when you enter instagram.com, it does a domain name lookup and tries to find the IP address that Instagram.com points to. So the IP address is linked to a computer. Then it goes to that computer and gets resources from Facebook.com, returns it to your web browser, and displays the page. Um, it's a little bit more complex than that, but at a very basic level, that's how you know um, the whole of the web works. So what exactly is web development? So it basically refers to the work done in building a website. I mean, it could be a simple landing page, it could be a social media application. I mean, it could basically range from simple landing pages to very very complex web applications. And just so you don't interchange with web design, I know it can be used interchangeably, and usually you hear people confuse web design with web development, but design is design, development is development. And development really involves you writing codes, right? So you might be writing Node.js, you might be writing HTML, CSS, while the design part is where you have a UI designer or a graphics designer trying to come up with, a UI design for an application or a website. Um, Moving on, so we have two main aspects of web development. We have the front end or the client side web development, and the back end or the server side. There is one last one. I kind of made it small because for me, I really don't like to look at it that much. I mean, the idea of full stack development has changed, but at the very basic level, full stack means being able to write front end and back end code. I mean, there are people that call themselves full stack developers, but I mean, in the modern age, full stack has evolved, and if you call yourself a full stack, you should be able to pick up an application from the beginning, build the front end, the back end, database management, server deployment, and all of that. And that's usually very difficult for a single person to do now. So that's why it's kind of small. So what exactly is front end development? Front end development basically involves you writing your HTML, CSS, JavaScript. You allow users to interact with your website. What happens when a user comes to my site and click on a button, or a user tries to submit a form? All of the interaction is usually done on the front end, right? But now, it's no longer just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. The web has evolved. Previously, I mean, probably decades ago, it was just simple as writing HTML, add some stylings, and that was it. But now we have evolved, and we need more complex interactions, right? So that was where the idea of libraries, frameworks came about to make our works easier. So over time, several modifications of this HTML, CSS, and JavaScript have come about. I mean, for HTML, you might have seen things like POG, things like HAML, several other ones. For CSS, you might have heard of SCSS, PostCSS, LESS, SAS, several other ones also. I mean, there are also libraries for CSS like the Bootstrap, Tailwind, and the rest. With JavaScript, you have libraries and frameworks like Vue, React, Angular as well, to Meteor, several other ones, right? I mean, all of this were just introduced to make the whole development process easier for developers. Um, Moving on to backend development, it can also be known as server side development. So it basically involves everything that happens behind the scenes, and that makes sense. We call it back-end development, so everything that happens behind the scenes. So the user comes to your website, tries to submit a form, and tries to log into your website. It clicks on the login button, sees a loading icon. But then what exactly is happening at that point? That's where the backend comes to play, right? The backend checks the database to see if the username exists or if the username matches the password, does all the logic, and returns a response to you. So unlike the front end development where you have HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, backend development is a lot more different, so to speak. You can write backend code in literally any language, but because of this, it's usually advisable for you to not focus on the language, but focus more on the fundamentals, right? So things like API design, database structuring, all of that. So when you understand those fundamentals, right, it's almost easy for you to pick up any language and write your backend code with it. Now, so some of the languages you can write backend code include JavaScript, Node.js. I saw someone asking a question previously whether you can use Node.js to write backend. Yes, you can write your backend code with Node.js. With Java also, you have Java EE, you have Spring, with C Sharp, C++, Go, Ruby. There are several other languages really that you can write backend code with. It's up to you to choose whichever one you want or you're comfortable with. Um, so now, what exactly is the relationship between the front end and the back end, right? So, like I explained earlier, you have a site loaded on the browser. On the front end, you have to make it responsive such that I can access the website on uh, my laptop or on my phone or my tablet. Then you have client-side scripts, so your JavaScript basically that runs in the browser. What happens when user tries to submit a form and he has not filled some of the fields there? You throw an error that, hey, look, you need to submit um you need to fill these fields before you can submit the form. So that's where client-side scripts come into play. um then makes a call to the database. So typical example is your login form. You're trying to send a message to the database to see if the username exists, do some interactions, check the password, return a token. All of that just sends all of that that flow to the backend to handle that. So interactions with your databases is usually done from the backend. Processing backend script to check what is getting from database, manipulation, and all of that is done on the backend. All it does returns the data to the front end. So usually you don't do database interactions on the front end. The browser is not exactly a secure environment, so try as much as possible to move all of those interactions to the backend. Now, full stack development, I'm not going to say too much about this, but basically involves you being able to write backend and front end code. So usually full stack developers are most times they're usually the senior guys that have a lot of experience writing backend and front end, and they're only able to build an entire applications without needing to hire another backend developer, another front end developer. Um, Now, how exactly do you get started with web development? Yeah. So one is pick a side and stick to it. So there is front end, there is back end. Usually, the best thing to do is pick one. If you want to be a front end developer, pick front end development and stick to it. If you want back end development, pick back end development and stick to it. If you decide um today I'm going to be a front end developer, and maybe 2 months into it you decide CSS seems hard, so I want to do back end development, then maybe down the line you realize, "Phew, I don't think backend development is for me," and then you keep on going back and forth, and you probably spent an entire year going back and forth. But then someone that had decided to just stick with backend development start getting job, and you keep wondering, what have I been doing wrong, right? So usually one of the best advice you can get is to pick a side and try as much as um it's usually very difficult, especially now, to try to know what path to follow. So even though I've chosen front end development, for example, where do I start? How do I go forward? I have learned HTML, I've learned CSS, I've learned JavaScript. So what else? Where do I go from here? So that's where roadmaps come into play. They allow you to follow it step by step, know where you're going to go, know, even give you resources to help you um, go through your journey easily. So find a roadmap. There's several other ones I shared. I'll share a link to several resources that can guide you to roadmaps and how to go through your journey easily. Another one is be consistent and disciplined. This is also another very important aspect. Um, Now we live in an age where you, I mean, we're in a social environment, right? You see people that do several things, and you could tend to get imposter syndrome, right? I mean, why is this? I mean, we started at the same time. Why is this person getting job and I'm still here? So that's where consistency and discipline comes into play. There are times where you wake up not feeling like doing anything, right? Just I can't do anything today. I'm just going to go out, have fun, can't code. But that's where you need to be disciplined. You need to to write code hours, right? You try to stick to that timeline. You try to be disciplined about yourself. Don't say because no one is looking at me, no one is giving me deadlines, so I can be free. You need to try to be disciplined with yourself, try to be consistent, and you will see results. Um, Another one is try to follow the trends. Right. I saw a joke where someone just woke up from a coma and was like, I want to start web development, but he wasn't able to know, where to start from. So you need to try to follow the trend as much as possible. So oh, a new library just came out, a new framework just came out. You need to like try to keep up with these new things because the web is always going to keep on evolving. It's not going to wait for you. So you have to try to follow the trends as much as you can. Um, Also, don't jump on every trend, right? I know I said follow the trend, but this next one is also important. Um, for me, in 2018, I started writing and a lot of people were like, hey, learn React, you get more jobs with React, or learn Angular, you get more jobs with Angular back then. But well, for me, I was quite stubborn and I decided, no, I'm just going to stick with Vue. So I kept on learning Vue. I mean, and I didn't even learn React at that time. But then, I mean, now I have at least 3 years of experience with Vue and I know almost, I know a lot about Vue, and I'm quite comfortable with it. That it's even easy for me now to pick up React or to pick up Angular and just start writing. But just because I did switch to React doesn't mean I was not following React, right? I knew about React. I knew about the new changes in React. I followed Angular quite a bit. So I didn't, switch from Vue to React, but I was following the trend. And that's what you need to try to do. Try to know about these new things that come out, but you don't necessarily need to switch because imagine you switch from Vue to React and then you realize I mean React might not be for me, so then you switch to Angular. Within that time where you've switched, you might have been able to stick to one framework, have been able to learn it, probably be middle level or senior developer in that framework, but you've been switching on career growth. Um, Moving on, know what language or framework you want to work with. Now, this is also especially very important. Um, Even for backend development, right? You have several languages, like I mentioned earlier. You have JavaScript, you have C Sharp, you have Go, you have Ruby. There's several languages really that you can write your. And it affected me because for about 6 months, I think, yeah, for about 6 months, I wasn't really progressing. I was just jumping from one framework, from one language to another. And yeah, so you need to know what language or framework you want to work with. So how do you now determine what language or framework to work with? The first one is, what is the most trending language in your location? In Nigeria, for example, the most trending backend language is usually Node.js or PHP. So if I wanted to pick up backend development and I was in Nigeria, I'd probably want to pick up Node.js or PHP because I mean it's trending, so I'm more likely to get jobs in these languages. So it will be nice to pick up those ones. For the front end, it's in Nigeria, for example, will be React. I mean, in the world, really, I think the most popular front end development framework is React. So you'd want to learn React, for example, and to be easier for you to get jobs. You have a lot of community. If you have questions that you can reach out to. Another thing to consider is the learning curve, right? Take for example, you wanted to pick up backend development and decided you want to go with Java. Now, not to say Java is hard, but it takes quite a lot of time to learn Java as opposed to learning something like Python or JavaScript. Um, if you decided you want to learn Java, you'd have to go through this steep learning curve, and when you're done, you'd have to then try to start looking for jobs. Not to say they are not Java jobs as much, but compared to things like PHP or Node.js, I mean, or Go, it's quite difficult to get jobs with Java. Another thing is the market demand. Now, another example, Java, right? It's usually quite difficult to get jobs in Java. So if you want to learn Java, for example, you should be absolutely sure. Maybe you have someone that could give you a job in Java and decided to learn Java, that's fine. But if you just decided I want to learn Java because I want to get a job, you might eventually get frustrated because you're not getting these jobs, you're not seeing these job opportunities. So before you pick a language, how easy will it be for me to get jobs? Another one is Angular, right? So for front end development, I mean, Angular is quite good as a JavaScript framework, but you would not want to start learning Angular now because React, Vue are more common front end libraries compared to Angular. So if you wanted to start front end development, it's much better for you to pick up Vue or React rather than Angular. And the last one I'm going to talk about is it also boils down to what exactly you like. And the reason why I put this at the last is because, what you like might not exactly be what makes money. So, I mean, for me, one of the motivations for writing code is because I want to make money. So, yeah, what exactly do you like is also very important when you want to determine language to work with. Um, like for me, I liked Vue. The first time I saw Vue, I immediately fell in love with it. And I felt, look, I'm just going to stick with this. I really don't fancy things like React or Angular, so I'm going to stick with Vue and I'm not going to write anything else. Right. So it boils down to what you as an individual, you as an upcoming developer, what you want to do. There are some people that tell you, hey, I don't like JavaScript, I like TypeScript. So they pick TypeScript over JavaScript, perfectly fine for them. There are people that tell you, I prefer Rust, I prefer Go. So just know what you like, and it's perfectly fine to try out several things to know what you want to write eventually. So, like I said, that 6 month phase in my career where I was jumping from several languages, that's perfectly fine. I mean, and those 6 months was able to show me plus plus I don't like Python. What I actually like is JavaScript, right? So when you're able to try out several things, you're able to find out what you want, what you like, rather. And one thing you should also notice, even though it's fine to try out several things, you should also try not to take too much time, right? Imagine you spend an entire year that might have started the same time with you and have figured out what they want to do, right? You most probably won't be on the same level with that person. So try to try out several things, but don't take too much time, right? Um, and now that's basically it for me. So I'm going to be sharing the link is a very good resource for front-end developers. You have roadmap.sh for backend and front-end development, and also the Mozilla Docs. This is also a very, very important documentation and resource for web development, whether it's backend, front-end, whichever one. So thank you very much. If you have questions, I will be attending to them now. You can just drop them in the chat section and I'll get to them. So yeah, thank you very much.
Okay. There was a question in the chat about what is the difference. Let me just get it and then I read it out. What's the difference between a framework, a library, and a runtime? Yeah.
Oh yeah, very good question. So a framework and a library they're quite similar actually. But with let me start with runtime. A typical example of a runtime is Node.js. So a runtime gives you an environment to run something on top of. So usually JavaScript is like a front end um language basically that only runs on the browser. You can't run JavaScript anywhere else. So that was why they created Node.js that allows you to run JavaScript on top of on the back end, basically on the server. So it's a runtime environment that allows you to run something on another thing, right? Then for a library or framework, that is a little bit confusing, right? But just look at it this way. With a framework, it forces you to do things its way. So a typical example of a framework is Angular. If you're using Angular, you have to do it the way they want. They have like a whole documentation where you have to follow the way they want you to do things. But with libraries are just something you can just plug into your application, use it however you want, right? You are more in control when you're using a library rather than um, using a framework. A framework basically tells you this is what I want you to do, and you have to do it this way. If you don't do it this way, it's not going to work. It basically gives you some sort of structure, right, and ways to write your code. So yeah.
Okay. Are there any other questions from the audience?
Yeah,
Actually,
so
questions
there's
in the chat.
one. Yeah.
Okay.
There's
There are
one
questions
where they
in the
say,
chat.
can I be able to use PHP and React? So PHP is a backend language, React is a front end language. You can basically communicate with any backend language from any front end framework, right? So yes, you can use both, but you just can't use them like together. It's usually best to do them separately. So you have your React separate, you have your PHP separate. You create your APIs with PHP, then you communicate with PHP server from your React front end application. So yes, you can use them. But again, like I said in my presentation, it's not exactly advisable to learn both of them at the same time because it's going to be difficult for you to follow all of them and learn them at the same time. So my advice, pick one. Do you like PHP first or React? Try to learn PHP to a certain level where you're comfortable with writing PHP. Then you can then switch to React and then learn React. And yeah. So or your question. Oh yeah, so is Git useful during web development and how? So Git is actually useful in anything development, whether it's web development, mobile development, data science. Um, so what Git does is it provides a platform for you to basically keep track of your code, not just keep track of it, allows other people to see your code, to contribute to it. So take for example, um, you have someone you're working with. The person is probably in London and you are in Uganda or Nigeria, for example, and you're working together on this project. You made a change on line 179, maybe in your index.js, and then he made a change on line 200, right? And you are working on the same file. So how do you now, how do you communicate these changes? Do you have to send index.js via email and say, oh, hey, look, I made a change on line 179, so take note. Then he will also tell you, I made a change on line 200, so take note of That's if it's just a single line. It's quite easy, right? But what happens when you've made a change to several hundreds of lines? You now have to start keeping track of those lines of change. So that's where Git comes to play. You can basically push your code to GitHub, and GitHub will keep track of where you made changes to, who made these changes, right? You can even decide to reverse to a previous version. So take, for example, you made a change and your app stops working. With Git, you can reverse to a previous version where your application was working well. So Git is pretty useful, and it's very advisable for you to push your code to GitHub as much as possible. Even though you're still learning, if you build, for example, a calculator application, push it to GitHub. If you build a simple to-do list, push them to GitHub, right? Even as a beginner, right, when you're applying for jobs, people might ask you, can you share your GitHub profile? But then I've not pushed anything to Git, so I can't share my GitHub profile, right? That's not a really good thing. So it's very important to try to push as much as possible to GitHub. Also collaborate on as much open source project as you can. So if you probably see an open source project, I think I can so yes, Git is very useful during web development, Emmanuel. Um, I usually get problems using Redux and NodeMailer and Express in my project. So I'm not sure I get this because I really don't know what problems you're having, but I'll probably drop a link to my Twitter handle so you can reach out to me. Just send me DM and I'll try to respond to you. Davis says he has a bit complex project with Node, and I may need your assistance. Yeah, so you can just send me DM on Twitter. I'll try to respond as fast as I can. So I think I've pretty much covered most of the questions. If you have any other questions, you can feel free to drop them on the chat section, and I will take a look at them.
Okay.
So yeah, thank you very
I
much.
have a question.
Yeah.
Yes. Of course. For me, I'm a developer, and developers. They say we write code, but I think there are people out there who would want to develop web applications with, let me say, low code tools. I do not know what you could recommend about it. First of all, the first question I want to know is it recommended to develop fully fledged applications with low code tools? Then, what are those low code tools that are available that you know about that you could recommend? Because if a web application can solve a problem and someone has identified the problem and they want to solve it, but they don't know how to code, I think it's imperative that these tools are available to them and they can solve them. And then also, I think I've heard about content management systems, the likes of WordPress, Joomla, Drupal. Can you just weigh in on whether they are good for serious web development? Yeah.
Yeah, so there are a lot of no code solutions out there, and it's perfectly fine. I mean, WordPress, I think last time I checked, they said WordPress powers about 50% of the whole web, and it could be true, right? There are people that build a lot of websites with WordPress. So basically, no code tools or low code tools are basically tools that allows you to build stuff with as little code as possible. I think I would like to say WordPress can be an example of a low code solution. So it allows you to build websites fast, right, without you having to write so much code. Another one is Webflow. Allows you to quickly build stuff. So take for example, I have an idea in my head. I'm a business person and I have little or no idea of front end or back end. So where do I start, right? So that's where these solutions come into play. They allow you to quickly prototype, quickly build what you want to without having to write as much code. So yes, it's perfectly fine. But then one disadvantage is most of these things become very difficult to customize as time moves on. So I need a very complex feature in my application, and this solution doesn't provide me a way to do that. So I'd have to start digging try to find hacks to um, it's it's fine to use them at the beginning, but when the application begins to get complex, you should start to consider moving your application to a more custom. You could hire someone else to build it if you don't, know how to write the code. But I mean, it's fine to use them at the beginning. But usually, when you have more complex features to implement, they tend to get very tricky to use. So, yeah, I think I covered most of your questions.
Yeah, you did.
Uh,
So yes, any question?
yeah. Someone asked if I need to learn a framework. Um, I would say yes. You should learn a framework. Um, so for front end development, you have HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. If you have a very good fundamental of those, um, it's fine. But companies especially, to just come on, write HTML and CSS. They use frameworks, right? So they expect you to know at least one framework. For example, front end, they expect you to know something like React or Vue or Angular before they can even hire you. So yes, it's very important to learn a framework, at least one, right? So learn a framework, be good at it. For backend, there are several frameworks. PHP, you have things like Laravel, Symfony, I think. With C Sharp, you have ASP.NET. There's several frameworks, right? So just pick one, try to learn it, be good at it, and you can start applying for jobs. So yes, you should learn a framework. Okay, so I think that answers the questions. And yeah, I'll send a link to um the slides to the host, so you can share with uh everyone here. Okay, how do you
Um,
master a framework? Yeah, another question. Uh, so the best way to learn is to practice. That's just the truth. And like I said, don't jump from one framework to another. If you want to learn, stick to React. There are several resources out there. You could check YouTube. If you have the cash, you could check out Udacity, check out Udemy. There's several courses that very good courses, on React. Another thing is try to follow people that are good in the React space. I think for React, there's Kenzie Dodds on Twitter. There's several people really that you can follow on Twitter. Aside that, also read documentations a lot. Then this cannot be overemphasized. Build projects as much as you can. Front end. I'll try to find it and can send it. I think frontendmentor.io something. So it gives you projects that you can build, right? So you can just take a look at anyone you think you find interesting, build it with React. Also push to GitHub as much as you can. So keep on practicing and don't just be jumping from one framework to another. And then, yeah, I think you should have a pretty understanding of that framework at that time. So,
I have a question myself. Thank you very much. I've been
yeah.
introduced. When you were jumping from framework to framework, were you confident enough to get a job?
Nope. Yeah, I wasn't. So at that time, it was because I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I was trying out. I started with Android development, right? I felt, the idea of building Android applications sounded fun. But then I started and I was like, this is quite difficult. And I didn't like it. So I left that. I went to Python. I was thinking maybe I could try out a little bit of data science. I also didn't like that, so I dropped it. But within that time, I wasn't confident in any of those things. I wasn't confident in Android development, in Python, to even say I wanted to apply for a job. I didn't have any side projects that I could even put in my CV to say, oh, hey, look, here's my the projects I've worked on. So within that period, it was kind of like a learning phase for me, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. So I really wasn't confident about applying for a job at that point in time.
Thank you very much. So there's even a question. When
Yeah.
did you get the confidence to apply for a job?
Um, one thing is this up till now, I still see jobs and I feel like am I really good enough for this job? So usually one thing is if if you're confident with a language or a framework, you would know, right? I mean, it then becomes easy when you want to start a language and feel you don't really need to check the docs again for most of these things. You can just start and you move in. You see like, oh, this thing keeps making sense. You don't get bugs as often. But then another thing is if you see a job application and you only fit 50% of the requirements, just try to apply, right? You will build the confidence to yourself. When you apply, they could give you take home assignments, give you things to build. When you are building them, that's also another experience for you. So don't wait until you know your requirement before you apply. I see a lot of jobs and I feel maybe they say you have to have 5 years of experience with Vue, you need to have used GraphQL, you need to have used all of these things. And maybe I just have 2 years of experience with Vue. Sure, I would apply. You might reject me, but I mean that's fine also. Um, but yeah, the confidence is it comes when you've built a lot of things, you built a lot of projects, you've reviewed people's codes, you've seen other people's codes, but again, you should also know that there are also job applications that you see that you don't fit a lot of these requirements. So just forget about the requirement, just apply. Even if they tell you 10 years of experience, if you have to, just apply. But then again, there are jobs where you don't even fit any of the requirements. Then please don't waste the recruiter's time, right? Imagine if you're looking for Angular developers and you only have experience with you don't even have experience with front end development. Just forget about it. More jobs will come, right? But if you think you have a little bit of experience with what you have what they need, even though it's not 100%, just try to apply. And yeah.
Okay, thank you very
uh,
much. Actually, the questions are
yeah.
building up. How important is a personal web portfolio as a developer?
uh I'd say quite important. Though for me, I really don't have a portfolio, and in a way it's because I'm lazy now and also because I really don't know what to add to my portfolio. So if you can build a portfolio, that's very nice. Try to add as many things as you can. But if you can't, try to have other means for people to know you know your stuff. So if it's writing tech articles, if it's giving talks, if it's contributing to open source, just try to do something that will get your name out there. So if you don't have a portfolio that a recruiter can search, make sure your name is out there. So if I go to Google and type your name, I'm able to see tech blog posts that you've written. I'm able to see your GitHub contributions. I'm able to see several things that can show me, oh, this person knows what they're doing, right? So that's basically the idea of a web portfolio to show me that this person really is who they say they are. They know their stuff. So if you can't build a web portfolio, then do other things, contribute to open source, write blog posts, give talks, things to just get yourself out there and let people know that you know what you're doing. So
The other questions in the chat.
well, okay. So what are the odds of freelancing? And secondly, does the geolocation matter? Uh, so for me, I really don't. I mean, it's all down to personal preference, but I don't like the idea of freelancing. I mean, because freelancing is kind of like maybe for 4 to 5 months you have a job, then after that 5 months you then begin to search for another job. But it's fine. If you have the experience, really freelancing would come easily for you. You would even have people reaching out to you that, hey, look, I have this problem. Could you jump on this gig? Let's work on it. If you don't have as much experience, it can be difficult. You might even try to sign up to platforms like what's the name of this? I forgot. I mean, there are several platforms that allow you to sign up with an account as a freelancer. But if you don't have enough experience, freelancing can be difficult. It might be difficult. Yes, Fiverr, thank you. It might be difficult to get these jobs, right? But I mean, the location, hmm, I'd say in a way it matters, right? So, take for example, especially in Africa, right? So if you are in Africa, for example, it might be difficult for you to get jobs, especially with someone in the US. So the US and Nigeria, for example, has about 5 hours time zone difference. So if I wanted to apply for a job in the US, they'll tell me, hey, look, you have to be within our time zone. So it can be very difficult to get that job just because I was not within that time zone. Yeah. So location matters also, and there are some roles that would say you need to be on site. So if I was in Nigeria and the role was in Germany or Netherlands, there's no way I can be on site, right? So location matters also when freelancing, and the odds of freelancing, it increases greatly with experience. So if you have more experience, you're more likely to get jobs. um yeah. How do you know you have mastered the language? So the thing is, when you sign up to be a developer, you basically sign up to a lifetime of learning. You would hardly see someone that says, "Oh, I have fully mastered a language," but it gets to a point where things just click for you. Maybe you're trying to implement a feature, and then you go and check for YouTube tutorials, or go and download the Udemy course for that. You know how to do it with that language without having to check. Even though you might have to check for one or two things, but you already know in your head how to implement it. At that point, you can say you have quite a solid understanding of that language. But again, it's entirely up to you. There is no exact metrics to say, oh look, this person understands the language, this person doesn't, right? But I mean, there comes a time when you're writing a language where it just becomes easier for you. You don't have to check things more often. Things just become easier for you to do. Yeah. So some more hints on Python. Is it necessary for backend development for web application? I wouldn't say it's necessary, but I mean you can write backend code with Python. There are frameworks like Django, Flask that allow you to write codes, right? So you can learn Python jobs with Django or Flask, right? Most times people that use Python usually use them for data analysis, machine learning. So if you want to explore that space, then yeah, it's fine for you to learn Python. But if you're sure you can get jobs with Django or Flask, then yeah, Python is also a good option. Yeah. Is it possible to use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to develop a native application? It's not possible to develop a native application, but you can develop a mobile application. Now, the difference is native applications are native, so you're building for just Android, you're building for just iOS. But then there are things called hybrid application, and there's this library Ionic, right? It allows you to write your HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and it builds it for you into in a mobile application. Sorry, so you're able to write your HTML, CSS, and use to an application for you. Another one is Electron. Electron is also a JavaScript framework that allows you to write your HTML, CSS, convert it to a desktop application. Examples of applications that were built with Electron: you have your VS Code, you have I think what's this, Figma was built with Electron. Atom also, the code editor was built with Electron. So there are several applications that were built, but I mean, developing native applications, then you need to like write native code. You need to write Java, for example, for Android. You need to write Swift for iOS. So uh, yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Any more questions?
Yeah, those are all the questions. So yeah, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat section, and I'll get to them as soon as I
We
see
have,
them.
yes, we have 20 minutes to the end of the session, so please ask all the questions and you should be able to answer. So, while you are at that, thinking about the questions, there are some announcements I would like to make for our chapter, the GDSC MUK chapter. Um, someone who is on the call, one of the core team members, please share the links to the relevant announcements that I'm going to be making. People, we are advised to share our stories about our tech journeys and how we have gone about, understanding technologies, how we have gone about, developing things here and there. So you are really advised to share your stories. Also, you can get back to us in our group. This question is for all of you to think about. We want to know if the quizzes that we give you are good. A question has come through, Mr. Abdul Kudus. There's a question in the chat right now. Please first address it.
Yeah, is Firebase recommended for backend development? So Firebase is it's actually a backend as a service, right? So it provides you a lot of tools. It's not exactly backend or a front end tool. What it gives you is it gives you a database, it gives you hosting, it gives you cloud services. It provides a lot of things for you. So if, for example, as a front end developer, I don't have idea of how backend works, but I want to build an application, then I can consider using Firebase because it gives me an easy way to just plug Firebase directly into my application, and I have like a database hosted somewhere, right? So it's kind of like a backend as a service. It's not. I mean, you can connect Firebase to your backend application, but most times, if you have a backend application that you're building yourself, you would most likely be using a database like Postgres, SQL, MongoDB, or whichever one. But it's rare to see people combining Firebase with their backend. But yeah, it's possible, but it's not recommended. Yeah.
Okay, on that question of Firebase, I have a problem. Okay, not a problem really, but something I would want to do. I would want to, because okay, I write backend code in Python, so I would want to store
Okay.
objects on Firebase storage. So of course I haven't yet gone about how to work it, but could
Yeah.
you please advise on how I could go about the problem? Because I've seen the APIs and all these things, but I don't really have a solid understanding about what to do.
So if I get your question, you want to save to Firebase storage, right?
Yes,
With what language? Sorry, I
Python.
didn't get that. Python. So you might have to. So usually Firebase gives like a lot of SDKs that you can use. You might have to check the documentation to see if they have a Python library for that. It's been a while since I checked the documentation, but mostly when I'm using Firebase, I'm using with JavaScript on the front end. So I'm not sure exactly, but they should have like an SDK for Python. But if they don't, then it might be a little bit more difficult to implement that. But you might just have to take a look at the documentation.
Thank you so much. So people, the link has been shared. The link to where you can share your story has been shared by Halima Bukira. It has been shared in the chat. You can click on it and go and express yourself to Google. These stories get featured on certain platforms by Google. So depending on how inspirational your story is, you can inspire the next developer. So I want to know whether the quizzes that you put in the Telegram channel are helpful, because not so many people interact with them yet. Actually, the group has so many people. So please tell us whether the quizzes are helpful. You can put them in the Telegram channel. We should be able to read them, the comments that you give to that question. I'm also going to actually ask the question there physically so that you guys can interact with it. There are some mentorship sessions that, okay, not really sessions as such, but mentorship opportunities that are available at this chapter. You could come to us and you want to be a mentor, depending on the capacity in which you serve wherever you are. You may want to mentor people, or you may want to be mentored. And this opportunity is only, of course, exclusive to those who are serious about it. You have to show that you're committed and you want to really be part of the mentorship, either as a mentor or as someone who's being mentored. So please reach out to us in the Telegram channel. My contact is there. You should be able to get in touch with us. Then also we have a solution challenge coming up. The reason as to why we're having this, technical sessions or like web development sessions, introduction is to help you understand the technologies you can use to implement your solutions for the solution challenge. The solution challenge is an annual competition organized by Google, where different chapters from all over the world compete and try to address the sustainable development goals of the United Nations. So please understand the technologies that we're giving you. The resources are of course, very, there are very many. We should be able to build solutions. The solution challenge for the next solution challenge is actually beginning in January, on January next year. So please start thinking about your ideas, brainstorming, and make sure they come to life. Note that your solutions must have at least two Google technologies that are being used. I think someone should share a link in the description about Google developer products that are there on the market. I'll just mention some such that you may know. We have Firebase. Firebase has a lot of functionality in it. Our expert has talked about it. They have Firestore for data storage. They have cloud storage. They have cloud storage is for object storage. They have cloud functions where you can put some, specific logic. They have quite a number of things going on there. You could use Firebase. You could use one of the APIs that are provided for in the Google Cloud platform. We shall definitely have a cloud session where we talk about the different cloud technologies, to inform you people, our community, about the different technologies that you can use in the cloud and how you can exploit the resources that Google uh, has provided. So the solution challenge is coming up, and we really want to win this. The last solution challenge, I was reliably informed by Halima that the winners came from Uganda. So they came from Muni University. This time around, we intend to bring it to Makerere University. So, members, let us do a great job and understand those technologies and implement at least two of them in our projects as we submit them to the solution challenge. We need to make sure we address one of the sustainable development goals, if not all, of the United Nations. So, that is it. Members, if you have any questions, please ask them. We're almost coming to a close. We are left with 11 minutes to the end of the meeting. Please ask questions that you have, and let's go and win the solution challenge. Are there any questions? Any more questions? Okay, the solution challenge. Halima Bukira, please answer that question, please, if you don't mind.
Okay. They're not things as such, but they should align with the SDG goals. And also they should be able to solve a need, a problem in your community. So yes, hope I've answered your question, Davis.
Sit down.
Okay, Davis, I think you have gotten a good answer to that. Abdul Kudus, there is a question. There's a question in the chat. Please look at it and answer. Thank you.
Yeah, so Emmanuel wants to know more about Bootstrap. So usually the way CSS works, it allows you to style your website basically by creating classes, then you style those classes, right? So what Bootstrap does is, like I said, the web has evolved. We are constantly finding ways to make our work easier as developers, right? So someone came up with the idea of Bootstrap, and basically what it does is it has its classes that's already been styled, right, for you. And all you need to do is just add the classes to your HTML, and the styles get applied to them. So you don't have to begin writing the styles yourself. So again, it's kind of like a CSS framework that allows you to basically build or style your applications faster. But then the downside of It's not exactly customizable. If you want to customize Bootstrap, you'd have to be writing a lot of custom variables, classes, adding a lot of importance everywhere. So just know when to use Bootstrap. It's easy and it's better if you want to start an application. You just want to get things done quickly, but eventually you need to move away from it. But yeah, that's basically what Bootstrap is, and I think Elijah has dropped a link to Bootstrap. You can check it out. They have a very comprehensive documentation. So
Okay, thank you so much. Halim has dropped in the link to our Google form where you can give us feedback about how this session was, and help us to better prepare and give and serve you better in this community. She has also dropped a link to the Telegram channel that holds the vast majority of our community members, where we can interact, ask questions, post resources, and there's a lot going on there. It's also where we post our quizzes, and it's really where we put things first when it comes to informing the community. So you should be able to join if you have not yet joined. Then you can also share it out on your social media platforms and anywhere to get more people into the community. That's about it for the announcements. I shall allow any more questions to come through because we have only 8 minutes to the end. Yeah, so that's really it. For the solution challenge, please, members, let us make sure we bring it home this time round. Let us bring it home and bring it to Makerere University. And we shall remember that this is the chapter that brought it back. I do not know about chapters that won in the previous years, but I think we need to bring it. So let's use all those technologies that are available from Google, and let's do it. We are waiting for questions. If you have any, please bring them through. Yeah, submit your feedback in the Google form that has been, put in the chat. Let me just copy the link and paste it there one more time. Please submit your feedback. Thank you. Yes, please share. Tag at DSC MUK as you share your experience on your social media platforms. Of course, that brings about more more visibility for our chapter. So thank you so much. The WhatsApp link is there if you want to join the group, the WhatsApp group. But the WhatsApp group got full. That's why we opened a Telegram channel, because the community is very big. We opened a Telegram channel because the community is very big, and the WhatsApp group couldn't really contain everyone. Yeah. There is a question in the chat. Please check it out.
can Node.js help develop a clone of something as complex as PayPal? Well, yeah. You can build something as complex as PayPal, but you should know that a single person can't build PayPal. I mean, PayPal took years of work to get to where it is, so you can't just expect to build it so soon, right? But yes, it's possible, but it will take time, to take a lot of work, take a lot of people also to do it. But I mean, it's very much possible.
Okay, guys. Please drop your social media links so that we can follow you and get the community going. Halim has taken the lead and she has dropped her Twitter, LinkedIn. So members, let us connect. Let us connect more. We have only 5 minutes. Please, if there are any questions, please ask. We need to make sure we exhaust all questions. I know you have those bugs you faced or those problems you faced when you were writing some code down. You can also ask them this remaining 5 minutes. So just drop your links, your social media links there, so that we can engage more. Yes, those who who are trying to join the WhatsApp group, it's actually full. Like WhatsApp has a limit of 256 members, so you can't really join in. Now you are recommended to join the Telegram group because it doesn't really have a limit to the number of members that can be in the group. So just join the Telegram group. The link has just been dropped there. Yeah, so you do that. Join the Telegram group and also drop your social media handles so that we can engage the group. If you fail to post it here, you can also post it in the Telegram group so that we follow each other and grow the community more. Yeah, that's it. I'm going to leave 2 more minutes for questions. Please ask the questions in those 2 minutes. If there are no questions in the next 2 minutes, I will gracefully end the session early enough. I'll end it 2 minutes early. Yeah, the WhatsApp group is full. Please join the Telegram. Join the Telegram group. It's where everything is. I've just posted the link there right now. Join the Telegram group. The WhatsApp group is full. Join the Telegram group, please. Okay. You're welcome, Davis. You are welcome. Please stay tuned. We shall be having other sessions for the cloud track. So we shall be understanding the Google Cloud platform and it's different technologies and how you can exploit it to your solutions in the solution challenge. Then we shall also have the Android track. So yeah, that's it. Please drop any questions if you have. Okay, since there are no questions coming through, thank you so much, Abdul Kudus, for being with us. Thank you so much for helping us understand these technologies. We thank you for sparing your time to be with us and helping us understand all these technologies. We have only 1 minute to go. Since no one is asking any questions, I would like to bring this session to a close. Again, thank you so much, Mr. Abdul Kudus. So,
Yeah,
members,
thank you very much for having me.
You are very welcome. We hope to meet you someday. Yeah, Halima is saying wait.
Yes. For those that are thinking about your projects, please think about them. You're going to be having a formal discussion about the projects and what the solution challenge is going to require. On the 6th of November, we're going to have an ideation session. We're going to think about what projects that we can build. If you have one that you're building, please continue build it. But yes, we're going to have a formal discussion on the solution challenge. Yes. Hope I've answered your question, Leku Davis. Okay, it's not like a question, but you're looking forward to it.
Okay, yeah, I think that was very informative. Thank you so much, Halima. It's already 4:30, and I think this is the time we're going to close. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here, for sticking around. You're change makers. You're going to go heights. Thank you for loving Google as well. Have a good afternoon. Thank you so much, Abdul Kudus. Have a good day. You can exit at will. You can get off the call.